Good afternoon. I'm Camron Bridgford. I'm a principal with CityFi. I'm really excited to be part of this transportation trends workshop, even if from afar today. And I'm going to talk about what the future mobility looks like across the country. So I don't need to tell anyone in this audience who's looked at the news lately about the challenges our world and country is facing, or how many of these challenges have direct impact on the challenges and opportunities we have to provide greater mobility access and connectivity. Headlines of climate change and its impact to our environment are daily. Climate change is hitting the planet harder and faster than we thought, some of which is happening because of greenhouse gas emissions from vehicle and transportation options. As we think about the future, mobility planning really has to consider offsets of these costs, including to more environmentally friendly vehicles, as well as considering fundamental mode shifts in how we get around. But even as we make some of these shifts to help the environment and dampen climate change impacts, ensuring equity and mobility access, which is tied to climate and environment, is part of the future of mobility. Many new technologies are coming on the market, from autonomous vehicles to electric cars, and cities are really grappling in real time right now with ensuring these options are equitable and still looking for solutions to do so. This is really critical because when you think of equity, this is your access to reliable, safe transportation, and that's directly correlated to your ability to access opportunities like good jobs and education, which ultimately leads to your financial wellness. And we really can't talk about the future mobility without talking about the challenge of safety and the critical importance of it. Safety is our North Star. But unfortunately, contrary to the implementation of Vision Zero plans across Europe, across the United States, motor vehicle crashes went up in the United States the first half of 2021, which was almost a 20% rise over 2020. So when we think about disturbing and startling statistics like that, we start to think, how do we ensure that we can leverage innovation and technology and mobility to do the basics right, which is really about offering safe infrastructure for all modes of travel to use. Now, as we think about, those were the challenges. Now let's think about our tools of change. You know, over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive shift in the number of transportation options available. No longer are the only options a personally owned vehicle or public transit, though transit will always remain the backbone of our transportation network and system. But much of this change has been enabled by mobile technology and digital innovations, again, supported by a strong backbone of the physical environment, again, like safe and smart infrastructure. But really at the heart of this transformation in transportation is recognizing that we need all parties at the table if we really want to reach the desired outcomes for the ideal state of mobility in our communities. The future mobility is understanding our community's needs and bringing together all sectors, public, private, nonprofit, academic, research-based, to the table together to ideate on what the best solutions are possible. It also means continuously leveraging technology, including data, as a means to an end and not a shiny object. Sorry about that. Tools of change that we have that we're currently looking at is thinking about societal cost benefit when we're making transportation and mobility investments. This is absolutely part of the future of mobility. This means no longer merely looking at the upfront capital or technology costs for funding a project, but really understanding truly long-term, what will the impact on the economy, the environment, safety, our health, our happiness be when those dollars are spent. The future of mobility also means starting to look at mobility as a right and not a privilege. This concept is being explored through pilots in California around universal basic mobility and mobility wallets, which are really piloted programs that aim to make mobility for residents as seamless, integrated, and available as possible, especially for the most vulnerable community members among us. And as mentioned a little bit previously, and what we've found very successfully here in Miami-Dade, the future of mobility will continue to be about leveraging public-private partnerships in order to offer mobility solutions that meet community needs. For mobility options to grow in the future, technology and innovation is needed, and technology and innovation cannot exist without partnership from the private sector. So to move forward our future transportation ecosystem, We need the innovation of the private sector combined with the public interest being shepherded by the public sector. So I wanted to talk today also not only just about the tools that we have to change our transportation and mobility system, but also thinking about what are technology trends going on in mobility right now that speak to the future of mobility. One which I mentioned at the top of the presentation is around electrification. It's one of the primary opportunities on the table right now. While the uptake in electrification has been somewhat similar to autonomous vehicles, and then it's been at a slow tipping point for a while, there have been an investment of billions of federal dollars into communities across the country for electric charging stations. And this is probably a once in a generation, once in a lifetime opportunity that really needs to be seized. Cities like Los Angeles and partnerships like the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator have been bringing stakeholders together for a number of years, actually, to accelerate electrification and zero emissions goods movement in their region. Solving access challenges to electric vehicle charging by providing regional and then finally ideally nationally networked systems of stations will be a first step toward providing greater accessibility to electric vehicles, which is one of the challenges I mentioned at the top of the presentation, both for personally owned vehicles, but we can also expand that to think about electric bus fleets, bikes, and even like sort of long haul trucks doing goods delivery movement. Thinking about another trend, and again, this idea of the integration of our physical and digital infrastructure, we can look at mobility hubs as a technology trend to keep an eye on and something that's going to grow in our communities. Mobility hubs aim to provide a more seamless and connected mobility experience. In cities like Pittsburgh, who alongside many other public and private sector partners, created the Pittsburgh Mobility Collective. The PMC is a program that integrates many modes, mobile payments, and trip planning to support expanded access to transportation, reduce costs and emissions, provide upward mobility, and modal interoperability. Excuse me. In New York City, the Department of Transportation has brought technology to the table with a critical back to basics approach that I thought was worthy highlighting of a technology trend at the moment. New York City's DOT has recently expanded miles of protected bike lanes. There are more to come through the end of 2023. And this program, this infrastructure program, has been combined with their public-private partnership with City Bike. This is the largest bike share in the nation, and it is now offering electric bikes in the city. You can see this graphic on the right here, which is a visual of bikes available throughout the different boroughs of New York City. It's supported by, so the bike share is supported by digital infrastructure. So it really allows residents to understand how and where they can access a bike. But the introduction of the infrastructure and the e-bikes has the potential to really shift how this city moves through congestion reduction, through mode shift, with a focus on safety as a North Star. And now as we think about autonomy and autonomous vehicles, autonomous vehicles haven't reached the tipping point that was expected a couple of years ago for a number of reasons. The technology hasn't evolved quite as quickly as predicted. Market investments have been slower as a result of that, and COVID obviously provided a series of challenges. However, there are a lot of interesting use cases right now being tested in autonomy, including not just thinking about moving people through single occupancy vehicles or even through shuttle systems such as this Texas headline I have down here, but thinking about goods and delivery and how we move goods throughout our world as things like Amazon, the Amazon deliveries of the world grow. So thinking about air drones and also personal delivery device robots or land drones. But as autonomous vehicles continue to evolve, there is a critical piece here where they need to be focused on finding both business models and use cases that serve a true purpose and need in the community. We want to be able to use this technology to help cities meet broader goals around environment, equity, mobility, access, and again, to not serve as a technology just for technology's sake. And so to wrap up, a couple key takeaways as we think about the future of mobility, innovation, and technology. Again, we have to prioritize both our physical and our digital infrastructures together. This is the only way to make the best mobility experience possible for all community members and to allow the mobility experience to help heighten the public realm experience and have a high quality experience in the public realm. And so this means, as we think about physical digital infrastructure, this means investments like in safe crosswalks with pedestrian priority signalization. And this means making sure our bike lanes, which leverage new technologies and modes like scooter share, are safe to ride. We also have to use, as I mentioned, technology to its highest and best use. If we don't understand what goals and outcomes we're working toward, we will end up with technology that exists only for the sake of technology. We want to leverage technology and innovation to build on the backbones of the transportation system, which is really about high quality infrastructure and transit. And finally, by bringing together this digital and physical world to create the most seamless mobility experience possible, we need to be leveraging those public-private partnerships, multi-sector partnerships. It's really our way we can achieve our goals more efficiently, more innovatively, more quickly when we're working across sectors to make mobility safe, accessible, and connected. Thank you so much for your time today. Wish I was there in person, but I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.